Welcome back to Hardball. In just 2 days, Barack Obama and John McCain will face off in their third and final presidential debate. NBC's Tom Brokaw, as everyone knows, moderated the last one. He's here to talk about that and also his book, another big seller from Tom, Boom, about the 60s. And I want to ask him in a minute about the sense of resonance that may be coming back about what's coming perhaps if Barack Obama wins and what he's offering and what we saw in the 60s.
Let's show the soft cover because that's a new one that's out, and we just saw the hardcover on.
This man knows marketing right here.
Talking about the 60s.
It's much less expensive a buy, right? For
much less expensive.
Who feel cramped by the current economic circumstances.
And we like that catchy phrase, talking about the 60s, because a lot of what we're talking about today came out of the 60s, in fact. You think about...
You've opened a can of worms. Let's proceed.
Well, the tumult of this presidential election, but we have an African-American at the top of one ticket, never would have happened without the 60s, without the civil rights movement. And traditional feminists may not be happy about it, but Sarah Palin, first a mayor and then a governor in a state like Alaska, and now a Republican vice presidential candidate, she's a product of the women's movement as well, because so many things were opened up at that time. We were at war in '68. We're at war now. The country's in a considerable amount of turmoil. This time it's economic, then it was cultural. So there are some issues. And the boomers who got the 60s started now are looking at their 401ks, and back then they said we don't care about materialism, but they're wondering how long they're going to have to work.
I love the 60s, Tom. Let's take a look at McCain and what he said this week. I want to talk about, first of all, since you were there, a unique experience to be on the same set with two men, one of whom will be president, and know that conflict. What's the electricity like there? Is there something that doesn't show on TV, that sense of immediacy?
Well, what I was struck by was that Senator McCain came out filled with energy. I mean, he was restless as he walked around the stage, and that was clear from the very moment that he arrived there. Senator Obama, on the other hand, stayed in his cool mode. He didn't take notes. He went back and sat on the chair for the most part when Senator McCain was talking. Senator McCain made a number of notes, and he had a lot of nervous energy about him. But I think I've said this earlier, that I didn't detect any kind of physical hostility between the two of them. It was all at a certain level of politics. Even that phrase, that one. I think Senator McCain got himself into a riff and didn't quite know how to get out of it, and a lot of people thought that he was really...
Okay, let's take a look at this one. Here's one. Let's take a look at the one about you, because I found that one absolutely... I couldn't figure it out. I still can't figure it out. Here's when Senator McCain referred to the moderator. I thought was an interesting point here in debate.
Obviously, the powers of the Treasury Secretary have been greatly expanded. The most powerful officer in the cabinet now. Hank Paulson says he won't stay on. Who do you have in mind to appoint to that very important post? Senator McCain?
Not you, Tom.
No.
Is that the Irish in McCain? What is that? That sort of a snippy response.
I honestly think that he was caught off guard by the question. I think both of them were behind the curve on what was going on in the economy and the magnitude of what we were dealing with. I thought it was a legitimate question. A number of people have said to me in both parties, we better have somebody in place for the transition on November 5th in Treasury because they now have control of the American economy in a way they never have before. So I thought it was a legitimate question. I don't think they expected it, and I think McCain turned to Obama. Is he going to have to answer this? And he was searching for an answer.
Was he thinking that you had exceeded your brief in that moment? Because it seemed like he was saying you're supposed to follow up, and that's an interesting new question.
Yeah,
that's a creative question.
I think he wanted me to ask about the $300 billion mortgage bailout, which I honestly thought that he would use that opportunity then to launch back into it. I'm going to get a Treasury Secretary who understands what I have just proposed here tonight and how to get that done. That's how I thought he would answer the question.
I don't know about you, but I find it very hard to predict who the public is going to say wins each of these debates. Maybe because our expectations are built over day after day of this, and the average person just tunes in occasionally. Is there something that goes on this year that seems to prevent McCain or Palin from getting scored the victor in these things? They do well. McCain has done pretty well. Is it the atmospherics? Every time they poll in real time, and even afterwards, the polling comes in, Obama wins, Biden wins?
Well, listen, I think you have to ask the people who make those judgments. What I really have believed after all these years of doing it, Chris, is that we represent one much smaller group of America, those of us who do what we do, the chattering class, the political pundits, however you want to describe it. We're micro-examining everything that is going on and making judgments about it. I think the public is out there, and they're making different kinds of judgments. It's more tonal, for example, and they have specific things that they're interested in terms of issues and how the candidates handle them. And so they have, if you will, a more tempered view of what is going on than we do. And in this case, it seems to have worked much more for the Barack Obama Joe Biden ticket.
Chuck Todd was on a few moments ago, and he said that every time there's the same pattern. Barack comes out, or at least the two times we've seen, does well for a couple of days, then settles down. Is he beating the spread every time, coming on and seeming better than the public relations image of him that's fostered by both sides? In other words, is he better than he is advertised? And yet that the advertisement turns against him 2 days later, the sort of the scuttlebutt.
Well, I'm talking to people on the Republican side, both the kind of professional operatives and the people who've been through these campaigns before. They're really impressed by him. They've watched this guy now for 20 months. He's made very few false steps. There were those times when his own operation, and certainly his supporters thought he ought to punch a lot harder. Even after the first debate, they thought he ought to counter punch more. He's got a very good sense of himself, and he stayed cool. And as I believed all during the primary season, Hillary Clinton made him a much better candidate for the fall. I think that's indisputable. He owes her a great debt for staying in the race for as long as she did, because he's better now than he would have been without her.
I just saw her in Scranton yesterday. I know she didn't win on points, but she's really good now.
Yeah.
She's gotten wrong. Let's take a look. I've been waiting to ask you this question because I'm curious about what you say. Here's John McCain in one of those great moments in a political campaign that really seem to tell you something about the man or the person running. Here it is, John McCain at a town hall in Minnesota on Friday night.
I got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not.
No man. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
Tom, tell the world what that moment was.
I think that's a very important moment for John McCain, and that's the John McCain that a lot of people thought we'd see much more of during the course of his campaign. He began 9 months ago by saying he wanted to run a respectful campaign. But look, he's got a tough brief. He's running in a party in which he is not a natural candidate for what now represents the base of that party. He had to go earn his place with them. And so there's a little bit of an identification crisis going on constantly when he's out there, and that's not unexpected for him.
Do you feel he's embarrassed by the tenor of the campaign, by the commentary of Governor Palin, by the advertisement, some of the things he said that suggest that his opponent is somehow a security risk, even someone who's really not to be trusted as one of us?
No, I don't know whether he's embarrassed by it or not. I do think there's a little bit of Bob Dole quality. Where's the outrage? I've been in the Senate for a long time. I was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years. I've tried to push back against my own party. And this guy, who hasn't been around very much, is cleaning my clock at the moment. And not only that, I've got troubles within my own party. I mean, you got Bill Kristol in the New York Times today, who has been a mouthpiece for this campaign, saying, fire the campaign, change everything. And he's been the one who's had
He should talk.
He's been using his column as a kind of playbook for Sarah Palin. Now suddenly he's coming out and publicly saying, get rid of him. Well, so that's got to weigh on him as well.
I think it's tougher to be in the arena than sitting even at the op-ed page of the New York Times.
It's the single hardest job in the world, Chris, is to run for president of the United States.
The author. Boom. He did like the 60s. He'll tell you. It's in the book.